Welcome back. I'm glad you could make it today because we're going to do things a little bit different today. Today's video is going to be answering a bunch of questions. I said I always read my comments, and in fact I do. And somebody asked a couple good questions on my last video, and well, it would have taken too much typing to give them an answer, and not everybody reads the comments, so I thought I'd do a video on it. Also gives me an excuse to talk a little bit about how to do some research that I think is going to be helpful to you. Now, I'm going to start off first. I'll just read you the questions that they asked me, and it was, do you have any people or research resources in particular that you would recommend? Well, that's the first question. The next two questions, actually, I think are they go together, so they're kind of one question. It's, how did you begin to understand? Did someone or something influence you? And then they ended with, thanks, Max, for having a calm voice of reason, which I'm not quite sure what they meant by that, but sounds pretty positive, so I'll take it as a compliment. Thank you very much. Now, first question is, do I have any individuals or research that I recommend? And the short answer is no. But this gives me an excuse to talk about something I wanted to talk about, because I'm going to tell you why I'm saying no. First off, I don't want you going through the list of people that I give you and ending up with all the same answers that I got. I don't want a bunch of clones. I want you to think for yourselves and be individuals. And, you might come across something I haven't come across that's helpful. And if I limit you to a list, which, by the way, that would be a very, very long one, so that's another reason for not giving you one. If I limit you to a list, you're going to spend all your time on that list, and you might miss something out that's really worth knowing. On the note of research, there are ways to do it because, well, it's going to vary. Where you look to begin with is going to vary on what you're actually after, because depending on whether it's, the horse nature and training, which kind of go together, or nutrition, or hoof care, or any one of a number of things, including medical issues and that, you're going to be looking in entirely different places. So that's, like I said, that list would end up being really, really long, because I'd have to include all these different areas, not just within one. So I can't do that, I'm sorry. But what I can do is I can tell you how to go about looking for people and resources. And one of the things I'll start with, and particularly when it comes to something like nutrition, there's not a great deal of research done on the subject. One of the leading experts is the National Research Council. And you might read 10 different articles on the subject of nutrition, and every single one of them is going to reference back to a study or research done by the NRC, which in fact is going to be giving you the answers from one person, even though you read 10 different articles. So those are things you got to watch out for when you're researching and you're reading articles, is where did they get their information from? Hopefully it all came from different places. Probably the only exception to giving names is when it comes to hoof care and trimming. Even if you don't do your own, I do think it is important to understand things, how, so you can recognize the difference between a good and bad trim if you're paying somebody else to do it. And you can also diagnose problems when they occur, rather than waiting till your horse is dead lame and then going, why is it that way? And then having to get somebody in to tell you why, and then, well, it could end up putting you many weeks or even a month behind on actually treating the problem that way. So you want to learn a little bit, and the one fellow that is probably the most knowledgeable man in North America is a gentleman by the name of Pete Ramey. And if you go to his website, which I believe is titled Hoof Rehab, he quotes a lot of other people, gives links to their websites and that sort of thing. So, you're not getting information from just one source with him. And again, he is one of the most knowledgeable. Brief history on the man. I might have this a little bit wrong, but I do believe he started out as a farrier, but was disappointed with the education he got in that field. Started devouring knowledge like crazy, as much as he could, anywhere he could find it. Next thing you know, he's actually got veterinarians approaching him when it comes to problems with hooves. Now, veterinarians, unfortunately, actually don't always know a whole lot about hooves. So don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing vets, but they have limited training, And the amount of knowledge they have in that field is going to be determined by how much experience they have with particular problems. And, well, it's not the only thing they deal with all day long, so that's not going to be their area of expertise by any chance. So, nothing wrong with consulting your vet if you got some hoof issues, but don't be disappointed if they don't have answers. And that's where it goes back to somebody like Pete Ramey, getting some resources from him can be very helpful in assisting your vet. And I know it sounds weird, you're helping your vet, but no, sometimes you actually have to. So when it comes to horse behavior and training, that's another one. I think those two have to go together, because you have to understand the horse behavior and its the nature of the horse in order to be able to do good training. And when it comes to that, you'll be watching a lot of videos probably, because it's a lot easier to see what's going on than to read about it. So I would say that when it comes to learning about training and horse behavior, videos would be the way to go, but use a lot of caution when you're watching them. Like I've said many times, is absolutely anybody can upload stuff to the internet. Doesn't necessarily mean it's any good. So how to watch out for the good and bad in horse training is there's a lot of things that you can actually watch for. The horse itself, that's a really good indicator, because I always say the horse is a good teacher. If the eyes are bugging out, the ears are pricked forward and standing on end, and the head's way up, and the eyes are bugging out, and the nostrils are flaring, and the thing looks like it's stiff as a board, it's nervous. It's worried. Something is happening in the way it's being treated and the way the guy's relating to it that's causing that. Maybe they're just going too fast. Maybe they're not really being too hard on the horse. They're just going too fast. Or maybe they are actually not treating that horse very nice. Those are things to watch out for. The trainer themselves, are they self-promoting a lot? Are they advertising their training and their DVDs and their books and stuff like that? Are they doing a lot of marketing? Are they trying to sell you training sticks and special leads and halters and all sorts of things that they try and convince you must have in order to be as good as them? Those are red flags, I'm afraid. Those are things to stay away from, because they're not about the horse. They're about making money and becoming popular. If they're marketing themselves, they're trying to make money, they're trying to become well known. In some cases, that's not completely a bad thing, because if a guy is really good at what he does, I suppose he deserves to make a living at it. But you got to be careful if there's too much of that stuff going on. The things that people sell aren't always bad. I'll give you a quick example. Rope halters aren't available everywhere. There are many places in the world where they are quite a rarity, and if you desire to use one, which I like to, even here, they're fairly common around here, but it's still hard to buy a good one. And you might have to do a fair bit of shopping around. So if you can find a website that actually sells them, that might not be a bad idea to buy one. But if the guy is constantly trying to tell you that you need to have his halter, well, that's not something you want to work on. Another thing you would want to watch for is, just in general, how they interact with the horse. Are they gentle and kind? Are they harsh? Are they using harsh methods? Or are they yelling at the horse a lot? Or are they just, real empathetic and gentle with the horse? That can make a big determination one way or another, too. Other things that you want to watch out for is the tools they use. Now, there's not necessarily, I'm not going to specify tools that I'd like or dislike, because there are some I have a preference for. But I would be more concerned with how they use them, if they use them, and how much they use tools. If they are very reliant on all kinds of tools and gadgets to do their training, that's probably not a good thing. My goal has always been to use as little as possible, and if I can, it'll be bare hands. Well, I don't know that that's possible just yet, but we're working on it. And once the horse has got a little bit of initial training, we can work barehanded with them, and that's kind of my goal. So, watch what they do, watch what they use, watch how they use it, things like that. I cannot specify. There are just so many guys out there, and probably a lot I've never heard of, that probably have got excellent teaching. And of course, that's going to vary from individual to individual who works best for you. So you got to get somebody that you're comfortable with. Chances are I said in another video, you're probably going to have to pay for training videos, but you don't have to go out and spend $1,000 on a DVD set either. There's a few guys out there that only charge, $30 a month or something like that to watch their videos online, and they're actually pretty good. Some of them are pretty good teachers too, and that's like going back to the teacher thing is, that's going to vary a lot. I can think of two guys in particular that I know of. I regard both of them as being extremely good teachers. However, I have talked to people that, some like one, some like the other. And they will speak of the opposite one as being a terrible teacher. Well, I think they're both really good teachers, but that just goes to show how it can vary. The needs of the individual can vary a lot. Their method or style of teaching can really make a big difference to you and how you learn. So you got to find somebody you're comfortable with in that regard, too. But even if you don't know a lot, just use some of the common sense things. And, again, their imagery, do they always have to have, flashy, well-trained horses that they're working with? Fancy facilities, their attire. Are they always spotless clean, wearing this really nice big Western hat and, a Western shirt? And are they always wearing chaps even when they're not roping or trimming, which to me is absolutely silly. You know darn well if they aren't roping or trimming, there's no reason for wearing chaps because that's what they were made for. Oh, that and riding through the bush too, to protect your legs. But, guys that do it for show just to look Western, if they're doing stuff like that, be cautious. But again, even the people that I would not recommend doesn't mean you cannot learn anything from them when it comes to methods and techniques. I can think of one guy in particular. I don't think he's a very good horseman at all, and rather arrogant. And he focuses a lot on the money and the fame and fortune stuff, but he also happens to have a lot of very good methods and techniques that I would never discourage anyone from learning. Would I suggest following him or spending money on his videos? No. That's the last thing he needs. And there's quite a few people like that out there. It's not, I couldn't narrow that down to one. Even that list would be pretty long. So doing your research, like go back to the, written stuff. If you're reading articles, and look at where they're getting their information from. I mentioned that. It's important. Get as many different sources as possible. Give credibility to articles where they actually tell you where they got their information from. If they don't, chances are it's just their opinion, in which case it may not be all that valid. It might not be wrong, but if they can't back it up with something, it might not be something you want to learn about. At least, you can't just take somebody's word for something, which is, again, why I keep saying don't believe me. Don't take my word for things. You can say, okay, it might be true, and then go out and prove it to yourself by doing some research. That's all right. That's what I encourage people to do. But I don't want you to just believe the first thing you read, the first video you see, or the first person you hear. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that part because, like I said, I don't want a bunch of clones. I want you to think for yourselves, do some research, and one more thing I forgot to add to that is when it comes to horsemen, some of the best horsemen are not well known. There's probably a lot of them out there I've never heard of. And those are people that you should be seeking out. Just because somebody isn't famous or popular or rich or whatever doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. In fact, there's a good chance they might be the better source. And I read an article not long ago about the horsemen, and if the trainer has a problem or if the instructor has a problem and they can't get a solution to it, who do they go to? They go to the horseman because he understands the horse. So the horseman is a very important person and also a very elusive creature, too. In this article, they talked about how you're never going to find them, well, I'll say rarely, ever find them at a clinic or doing clinics, and you're not going to find them in an arena too darn often. Not going to be at a competition or anything like that. No, they're going to probably be out somewhere in the back 40 playing with their horses because that's their passion and that's what they're good at. So, as far as a resource goes, you might come across somebody I've never heard of. In fact, somebody that maybe not too many people have heard of at all. maybe some guy just down the road from you that, spends most of his time just hanging out with his horses, that, he might not know much about any of the modern methods, techniques, and the tools and stuff like that, but he sure might know horses well, and that's pretty important, because if you get to know the horses well, the rest, it'll kind of come together for you. Like I've said, the mentality is far more important than the techniques and methods that you're going to use. So I'm going to move on to the next two questions that I think kind of go together. And the one I'm not entirely sure about, did someone or something inspire you? Well, I'll get to that one. But how did you begin to understand? Well, that's kind of in a way, that's a vague question, because my understanding of what? Well, animals in general, I think I've had a bit of an affinity for them and a bit of connection to animals right from my childhood. But when it comes to the horses, well, I didn't get into horses until later in life. And when I first started getting horses, I really didn't know much at all. But I knew there was a better way of doing things. I always felt it that, even when I raised a lot of dogs and trained a lot of dogs over the years before I ever got into horses, and my ways improved and changed quite a bit over the years, and I looked at that same evolution, and I looked at the horse, and I thought, yeah, well, I've kind of heard of a lot of these traditional methods of doing things, but you know what? I think there's a better way, and I have always leaned towards. I'm a little bit extreme in some cases. There's lots of guys that are pretty gentle and do a lot of groundwork and that sort of thing. I probably do a little more. I'm probably off at the far end of that one when it comes to that sort of thing. But the understanding, basically, part of it is something I think I've always had. I may be a little different that way. I think I've always had it. There are some very, very good horsemen, both past and present, that were like that too. I think they just had a gift right from the beginning that allowed them to be a much better horseman than most people. And because for me, this stuff comes pretty easy. I don't have a lot of trouble with it. The horses seem to like me. I got four just off camera standing there staring at me right now. And I'd actually like it if they come over a little closer. They'd make a nice backdrop. Whatever. Doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. We're not trying to look good here. But my inspiration, though, largely, although I already had a bit of the mentality that I wanted to do something different and better, but I had no idea how to go about the training part of it. And there was, in fact, I'm not going to use a name again, because it could be very different for you. But I was actually inspired by one guy in particular that I found to be a pretty good teacher, and I liked his videos. A friend of mine happened to have a DVD set of his videos, which was, 7 or 9 DVDs. I don't know, I only watched about half of the first one. That's all it took. And I liked his style. He was very real world. He would actually borrow horses from a stable across the road from his place to do his videos, and these were horses that had very limited handling, completely untrained, and he would go through step by step how to do it. And by watching these videos, I discovered that there was a certain element to them that every step of the training used this same communication method with the horse that allowed them to communicate with the horse. And, well, like I said, I got about halfway through that first DVD, the little light bulb went on, and I go, wow, well, that's easy. I can do that, which was pretty good, because at about that time I had purchased a horse that I'd already been buying and selling horses, because I was, I could say I was rescuing them. They weren't, the ones I was getting, they weren't in terrible shape, but, they were maybe destined to auction or something like that. And for those that don't know, 75% of the horses that go to auction in Canada end up on somebody's dinner plate. Not something I want. And I remember I bought 3 from one place in particular. They were all well-broke horses. There was absolutely no reason for them to end up as food. Just didn't make sense. Well, I got this one little guy, and I thought he just had some trust issues. And I thought, well, even if I don't know much, I can work with that. And when I got him, Well, you couldn't even catch them or touch them, and within less than a week, knowing nothing at the time, I could catch them and halter them without a problem. Prior to purchasing him, he'd actually spent about a week on the other side of the fence because they'd got out and they couldn't catch him to put him back in. So anyhow, I finally realized that he was actually much worse and needed complete training. And so that was the point at which I decided, I'm going to have to learn how to train, which I always wanted to do, but I didn't know how to go about it. So that was when I really got hardcore into watching videos and reading articles and picking up tips and tricks and such from other people, and I just kind of went from there. So one of my inspirations was definitely one particular guy put out a set of DVDs, of which, like I said, I only watched half of the first one, but it worked. It was what I needed. And then other inspirations. There was another one, and it happened a little ways down the road, but I was already thinking, and it's something I talked about even just in a recent video, is you can do a lot with little. You don't need a whole lot of stuff, and like I said, my goal has always been to work barehanded. And I watched a video of somebody, and I'm sure quite a few of you have probably seen this video. They did a ride in a competition where it was a reining competition, a bareback reining competition. They decided to up the game because they wanted a better chance of winning, and so they did it bareback and bridleless, completely tack-free, and they won. That ride happened to make them famous, and they've gone on to great fame and fortune since then. But watching this individual winning a competition with absolutely nothing on that horse really inspired me. Well, it was more confirmation than anything that I was on the right track when it come to doing very little or using very little to do a lot. Because, well, hey, if they can win a competition, I think maybe I could do okay too. I mean, I'm certainly not as good as them, never will be. I know that. And if I mentioned who it was, I'm sure you'd probably agree. But they were still a good inspiration. Well, more of a confirmation, because they confirmed that you don't need a lot to do a lot. And that was one of the things. So I think that kind of wraps up my answers to those two questions. I think that'll be enough for a video right there. But, think for yourself. Go out and do some research. Watch the background. Watch what's going on behind the scenes. Pay attention to how the horse is acting, how the trainer interacts with the horse, the methods and techniques they use. Well, those are going to vary a lot anyhow, but if they're particularly harsh, you might want to stay away from that guy. Don't learn too much from them. And, like I said, watch the horse. That could be quite helpful too. And, it's not something you're going to learn overnight. I've said that before. Learning what to watch for. You're going to have to, it's going to take a while, but watching a lot of videos, even if you don't learn anything else from them, just watching the horse helps you learn what to watch for in a horse, so you know when the horse is getting nervous and uptight and a little excited about stuff. And then you can tell when you're working with your own horse how your own horse is responding to what you're doing. So a combination of paying attention to your own horse and paying attention to the horses in the videos you watch, you can actually learn quite a bit that way too. But my understanding, going back to that one, my understanding is just something I got. I can't, and something like Ray Hunt said something one time. A lot of you probably know who he is. And he said that, there are things that cannot be taught, but they can be learned. And your mentality and how you interact with a horse, that would be one of them. Some people are born with it. Some people will learn it. For those of us that are born with it, it's much easier. Or even if you got a little bit of it, you can learn the rest quite easily. Even if you don't have any of it, you can still learn it. It's going to be a little harder, but there's definitely a certain mentality that you've got to have that I can't really explain that one to you. I can't teach that one to you, and I can't even properly explain how I got it. All I know is it's something that was always deep down inside and has grown ever since. And to the day that I die, I don't think I'm ever going to stop that one. I think I'm going to continue to understand the horse. The first, say, 5 years that I had horses, my learning curve was pretty steep. Nowadays it's leveled out a lot more. Not learning as fast because I've kind of gotten to a point where, I'm actually having troubles. Not that I don't want to. I want to keep learning, getting better. But I'm actually having trouble finding people that I want to learn from because I want to find people that inspire me because of how they do things. And there's a few out there, but not a lot of them. And there's, one guy that I'm going to drop a couple names. They're not with us anymore. Hello, sir. How you doing? I like this guy. I was going to sell him when I was done training him with him. I'm not sure I'm going to now. I might just keep him. I like him too much. Anyhow, there is a couple guys. I'll give you their names because they didn't so much teach methods and techniques as they did mentality, and that's kind of what they were about. And first one being a fellow by the name of Tom Dorrance, who, by the way, also had a brother by the name of Bill. Well, actually, he had, I think, 5 brothers. But his brother, Tom, he's not with us anymore, neither is his brother Bill. But Tom, I believe, wrote 2 books, and I confess I haven't read them. The one I intend to read someday, that's on my bucket list. Bill, his approach is a little bit different, but he also wrote a book as well. And but Tom was far more about attitude and mentality, and he talked about the people that had good methods and techniques. He referred to them as surface workers because they simply addressed the outside of the horse and its behavior. They were superficial in the way they did things, and in his videos and books and stuff, he talked about dealing with the soul or the spirit or something to that effect. I think he said soul, but there's something inside the horse. It's a deeper thing than just making it do something because you influenced it by an outside force. You will need to influence the inside of the horse. That's the difference between what most people do and people that use the mentality. Now, there's another very good horseman that's not with us anymore that you will probably hear about as well. His name is Ray Hunt, and Ray, he approached Tom and learned from Tom as well. Now, even when they first met, I don't think Ray was a whole lot younger than Tom, but when they first met, Ray was already a pretty darn good horseman, but he was more of a surface worker. He had the methods and techniques really good. He knew all the right things to do, but he lacked that inspiration to understand, to be connected with the inside of the horse. And that's what Tom taught him. And once he got the hang of that, figured that out, and light went on for him, well, then he also went and promoted that. But neither one of them were, when they were alive, neither one of them were all that famous, and neither one were rich. But I'll tell you, the 2 of them, they're not the only ones either. They're just ones we know of because, like I said about horsemen, they're rather elusive. They aren't into fame and fortune. In fact, I believe Ray was quoted in a biography that somebody else wrote about him, is not long before he passed. He said, if I had known that there was any commercial value to what I did, I never would have done it. He was a bit of a purist. He was about the horse. He wasn't about fame and fortune, and that's kind of what I want. So when it comes to understanding the mentality and that sort of thing, those are 2 names that I would encourage you to do a little research on. If you look at their books or anything, don't expect to find step-by-step training manuals. You're not going to get that, but you're going to get a good insight into the attitude that you need to have to be able to work with horses successfully, and I think that's the important thing. So that about wraps it up. If you can find somebody else to influence you along those same lines as those guys, go ahead. Just because somebody's famous and well-known doesn't mean they're any good. Just because nobody's ever heard of them doesn't mean they're not any good. So keep that one in mind. So, guess to summarize, no, I can't give you a list. Go find out for yourself. I don't want to create a bunch of clones. I want you to think for yourselves. As far as my understanding and my influences, well, I think the understanding I always had, it's increased significantly over the years. Inspirations was one very good teacher, and one ride that I watched that kind of told me, yeah, I'm on the right path. And, well, even since then, I still keep seeing things and hearing things that, indicate that, yeah, I'm on the right road. At least I sure hope I am, because a lot of other guys were too. They weren't rich or famous, but we shared the same path. So, and there you go. That's the answers to the questions, and I hope that helps you out a little bit. I know there weren't a lot of direct answers, but get you pointed in the right direction, help you do a little research, and good luck, and have a good day. Bye now.